We affirm, and our sole contention is escaping the underdevelopment trap. China's economy is slowing as its industry-driven growth levels off. In 2013, Chinese President Xi Jinping announced a solution, the massive infrastructure project he termed the Belt and Road Initiative. Zhang Peng at the CFR writes in 2019, the Chinese leaders are determined to restructure the economy to avoid the so-called middle-income trap, where wages go up and quality of life improves as low-skilled manufacturing rises, but countries struggle to shift to producing higher-value goods and services. The BRI will offer new import and export options, creating new production chains that will spur the development of the Chinese economy. However, China's stuttering economic growth may bring its grand ambitions down to earth. Professor Mei Jingpei at Claremont McKenna University explains in 2019 that China's external environment has changed almost beyond recognition since Xi rolled out the BRI in 2013. At that time, China's foreign exchange reserves were approaching $4 trillion, where they were used to invest in infrastructure. But now, China's economy has slowed down, triggering capital flight, draining more than $1 trillion from its foreign exchanges. Some projects have to be curtailed or even abandoned right now. The EU must join the BRI to save the sinking ship. Alicia Garcia Herrero at Bruegel writes in 2017 that China cannot rely on its banks alone to finance such a gigantic plan. The key source of co-finance would logically be Europe. The European Union has its own grand plan for financing of infrastructure, namely the Juncker Plan, which could serve as a basis to identify joint projects of interest both in the EU and China. The EU should fund the BRI not only because it has shared economic interest with China, but also because the initiative would develop poor countries through trade. Trade is the driving force behind economic development, as Pascal Lamy, former director of the WTO, writes in 2009 that history tells us that no poor country has ever become wealthy without trade. It's about helping to integrate developing countries into the global economy and ensuring that they can take advantage of trade openings and greater access to markets for their goods and services. The BRI would increase trade in 3 ways. First is hard infrastructure. Nadia Rocha at the World Bank explains in 2019 that when it comes to trade, speed is of the essence. This is especially true for developing countries integrating with global markets. When goods and inputs are time sensitive, delays can be particularly costly. For this reason, the time it takes to get goods from one place to another is the key variable determining how successful a country will be in global markets. The BRI will improve infrastructure like roads, railways, and ports, decreasing trade times. Economist Francis de Sawyer writes at the World Bank in 2018 that implementing all BRI transport infrastructure projects will reduce travel times, lowering aggregate trade costs for the BRI economies by 3.5%. Second is energy infrastructure. Philip Cornell of the Atlantic Council writes in 2019 that energy projects have always been a major part of the BRI. President Xi proposed to establish a global energy network to meet global power demands with clean and green sources. In poor rural environments, the expansion of power grids is also important for addressing energy access, with its multiplier effects on development and provisions of information technology services for economic connectivity. The creation of continental electricity networks will light up the world, massively improving trade and spurring huge economic growth. Cornell estimates that energy investment in BRI countries would add up to $27 trillion in economic growth by 2050 and over 200 million jobs created in the process. Third is internet infrastructure. Billions in the developing world lack access to high-speed internet, but the BRI will change that. Susan Crawford at Wired writes in 2019 that each of the many trans-Eurasian rail lines are part of the mammoth BRI will be accompanied by fiber optic cables carrying impossibly huge amounts of data across thousands of miles without delay. The BRI will allow China to do this across huge territories that 65% of the global population calls home. This will not only increase access, but make trade faster. As economics professor Yalvin Silin writes in 2017, 5G communication networks are 1,000 times faster than 4G. The effort will simplify processing goods, help with receiving information on the delivery of cargo in real time, and introduce unmanned automobile and railway transports. Overall, the World Bank finds in 2019 that the BRI could boost global trade by 6.2% and lift 7.6 million people out of extreme poverty and 32 million people out of moderate poverty. Thus, we affirm.